Right at this moment, Kazakhstan said no to the empire and struck back. A harsh blow to Moscow, and the country is turning the tide of the war. Ukraine is triumphing. Tokayev did something that drove the Russian leadership mad. This changes everything drastically. And then France clipped the Kremlin's wings. The shadow fleet of the Russian Federation is on the hook. A ton of weapons from the Czechs for the Ukrainian armed forces. It's something incredible. A powerful triple strike from the sky. Allies are breaking into the Ukrainian front. The Kremlin is choking. Only a few minutes left until the X moment. All this in our episode of Hellpoint. That's it. Kazakhstan has broken ties with Russia. Moscow did not see this coming. Tokayev is pushing through and hits Putin painfully right in the back. A shocking and dramatic turn of events. The Kremlin is melting before our eyes. Russia's allies are falling away one by one. Ukraine is now in a total winning position. Is Astana really becoming a powerful ally of Kiev and preparing to strike at the Russian capital? More about this in the segment Watch Next.
Ukrainian President Zelensky and Kazakh President Tokayev met in New York for the first time since 2019. On the sidelines of the UN Assembly, Tokayev stated that it is time to sit down at the negotiating table, although he did not directly condemn Russia.
Kazakhstan is deeply concerned about the crisis around Ukraine, which continues to inflict serious harm on civilians, undermine global trust, and weaken international security. Nevertheless, it is necessary to continue bilateral and international diplomatic efforts to resolve this conflict.
Kazakhstan seems to maintain its neutrality on the issue of the Russian-Ukrainian war and offers its mediation services.
Kazakhstan initially offered its services as a possible mediator and only as a venue for negotiations between the two opposing sides. That position has not changed.
But as they say, the devil is in the details, and there are many details in Kazakhstan's relations with both Russia and Ukraine. For example, Kazakhstan refused to cooperate with Moscow on building a nuclear power plant. China will build them instead. Also, according to Kazakh authorities, they are preventing Russia from circumventing Western sanctions. Well,
we are taking measures to ensure that our territory is not used to bypass these sanctions. Various comprehensive measures are currently being taken, including the meticulous tracking of goods, advanced online tracking systems for goods, and even the dedicated creation of a specialized website where you can thoroughly check whether a particular company or individual trader possesses certain sanctioned goods within their inventory. I believe that all our diligent exporters are fully aware of these regulations and accordingly consistently comply with them.
And President Tokayev stated that he does not recognize the legitimacy of the so-called LNR and DNR.
We do not officially recognize the independent status of Taiwan, Kosovo, South Abkhazia, South Ossetia, or indeed Abkhazia itself. And, in all likelihood, this fundamental principle will be consistently applied to the corresponding quasi-state territories, which, in our considered view, are specifically Luhansk and Donetsk, both regions currently experiencing significant geopolitical complexities.
Of course, Russian politicians and propagandists cannot tolerate such audacity and regularly threaten Kazakhstan with war, claiming the same things they said about Ukraine, that these are supposedly originally Russian territories.
If we don't resolve the issue with Ukraine, we'll have problems with Kazakhstan, with Armenia, and with other countries that surround us. With Kazakhstan? Well, of course. Why? We'll just look at what's happening in Kazakhstan today, in terms of building some kind of Kazakh state, how national mythology about independence is flourishing, about the switch to the Latin alphabet. There's a lot of interesting things going on there. But if you get involved like that...
The situation in Ukraine is clearly reflected in Kazakhstan. There are also huge regions there populated by Russian speakers.
Some people in Kazakhstan believe that in the long run, we want to, as they say, follow the Ukrainian scenario and take northern Kazakhstan from them. What do you think? Did we have such plans if we had the means for it?
I believe that we have historical rights to those lands. These are industrial regions. These are cities that were built by our ancestors. Why did we give them away in '91? On what basis?
Because of this, a list was created in Kazakhstan of Russian citizens who are banned from entering Ukraine. This list includes about a dozen Russian state deputies, as well as Tina Kandelaki, the ideologist of the Russian world Dugin, and the late husband of propagandist Simonyan.
Kazakhs, my dear brothers, what kind of profound ingratitude is this truly? Please take a very good look at the situation in Ukraine. Think about it seriously. If you truly believe that you can continue to be so incredibly sly and cunning, and that absolutely nothing negative will ever happen to you as a consequence, then you are gravely mistaken.
President Zelensky has repeatedly stated, citing intelligence data, that Russia has military plans for Kazakhstan.
Yes, we have indeed received confirmed information that among their primary priorities are the sovereign Baltic countries, as well as the Republic of Moldova and the nation of Kazakhstan. These are the nearest targets of the Russian Federation.
The president of Kazakhstan stated that he would put an end to attempts at separatism, while Kazakh deputies went further and laid claims to territories that are currently part of Russia.
We, as responsible citizens, must respond to any manifestations of radicalism, extremism, and separatism. Be delicate and at the same time firm, and ultimately be fair.
We need to understand that Novosibirsk is not Novosibirsk, it's Novy Sobir. These are our Kazakh territories. Tyumen is Tyumena, it's the southern lands of the Golden Horde. That is, even beyond Tyumen, further north, those are also our territories. Orenburg is not Orenburg, but Orenburg. And when the capital of the Kazakh state was there
was also a lot of different information from intelligence. For example, that Putin demanded Tokayev supply weapons for the war with Ukraine, and after Ukrainian drone attacks on oil refineries, he begged Kazakhstan for gasoline. At the same time, Putin constantly humiliatingly mixes up Tokayev's patronymic, and apparently does it on purpose.
Everyone knows, of course, that the president of Kazakhstan, Kamyar-Jamache Tokayev, appealed for help to the members of the Collective Security Treaty Organization.
Kamyar-Jamache was speaking. We believe Kamyar-Jamache, it's good to see you here. Kamyar-Jamache said that there are about 27 million.
We firmly and truly believe, Kamyar-Jamache that this is a truly crucial and significant point.
Putin's plan was to draw Kazakhstan into the so-called Union state following the example of Belarus, but he failed. Tokayev only rejected such proposals 8 times.
Recently, the president of the Republic of Belarus, Alexander Gorchenko, suggested that Kazakhstan should join the Union state. I took it as a witty joke. I think there is no need for this, since there are other integration associations here, primarily the Economic Union. As for the nuclear umbrella, we don't need it.
Even those who seem to be Russia's closest allies understand that it's impossible to trust terrorists and murderers, so it's necessary to keep them at a distance and, if possible, support those who oppose them.
A harsh blow to the Kremlin. The French authorities have detained a tanker from Russia's shadow fleet. It seems that this is exactly where the enemy was launching drones towards the Danube. Finally, Putin is having the valves tightened on him. Devious plans are going under. This is a historic moment. A slap in the face that could be the final one. Will Russian terror in Europe finally end now, or will the occupier once again find cunning loopholes? All this in just a moment.
History has never seen anything like this before. French special forces stormed a tanker from Russia's shadow fleet, which may be connected to the drone incidents that have recently been recorded on the Danube since the vessel was passing along both banks. The day before, French TV channels showed footage of the French Navy detaining the tanker Boracay along with 2 crew members. This was also confirmed by the Prime Minister of France, Sébastien Lecornu. The international agency Reuters reported that this crude oil tanker, sailing under the flag of Benin, left the Russian port of Primorsk on September 20th. It passed through the Baltic Sea near Denmark before entering the North Sea and heading through the English Channel. I suspect that this vessel not only belongs to the Russian shadow fleet, but that drones could have been launched from it against the territory of European countries. Currently, the French authorities have launched an investigation into the vessel Boracay, which sails under the flag of Benin, and for several days now, the tanker has been anchored off the Atlantic coast of France near Saint-Nazaire. Meanwhile, President Emmanuel Macron at the EU summit in Copenhagen told journalists that an investigation into the Russian shadow fleet tanker is indeed underway due to serious violations. However, Macron refused to confirm information about the vessel's connection to the recent drone incidents in European countries, saying that he would be very cautious on this matter. Western media claim that the tanker, built in 2007, is 244 meters long and has repeatedly changed both its name and its flag. Previously, it was registered in Gabon, the Marshall Islands, and Mongolia. The vessel has already repeatedly participated in Russian oil trade and is under sanctions not only from the EU, but also from Canada, the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and Switzerland. EU leadership stated that the detained vessel used irregular and risky shipping methods, allegedly encountering drone launches. The United Kingdom went even further in its statements. British officials claimed that the Boracay vessel was involved in activities whose purpose or consequence was the destabilization of Ukraine for profit or to support the Russian government, while transporting oil to a third country. However, at present, as investigative journalists write, there is no irrefutable evidence that would allow Moscow to be officially accused. So far, the Kremlin has not commented in any way on the actions of the French authorities regarding the detention of the oil tanker. Perhaps they are still recovering from the shock.
The Czech Republic is strengthening Ukraine's arsenal. Arms supplies and production have been ramped up to the maximum. The logistics corridor is functioning and ammunition is being delivered to the front. This could turn the tide of events. The Allies have united like never before. A joint strike against Putin's military might is a decisive moment. So, what will ultimately defeat the enemy? Weaponry or the combined strength of the entire West? All the details are in the following report.
Ukraine and the Czech Republic are creating their own Ramstein. Our country's goal is to deepen this cooperation by signing an intergovernmental agreement and a support program for affected enterprises. The industrial Ramstein, as noted by Ukraine's Minister of Economy, Environment and Agriculture, Oleksiy Sobolyev.
Not only the Czech defense industry, but also the political leadership of the country at the moment in what are called Czech initiatives is a key element in providing material and technical support to Ukraine's defense forces.
These are the facts, HGAD. For the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic, Ukraine is a priority country for transformational cooperation, a country of special focus within the framework of Czech development cooperation, and a beneficiary of humanitarian aid.
At the moment, under the Czech initiative, around 2 million artillery shells have already been delivered. This has significantly strengthened the capabilities of Ukraine's defense forces, both in the immediate and in the ongoing struggle, and accordingly has led to concentrated depletion in certain strategic areas, as well as corresponding concentrated depletion in certain strategic areas. The Czech Republic, a steadfast ally, has generously supplied Ukraine with a substantial arsenal, including around 70 T-72 M1 main battle tanks, more than 140 armored infantry fighting vehicles, multiple powerful rocket launcher systems, and an impressive quantity of approximately 4.5 million rounds of ammunition. This comprehensive aid package specifically encompasses vital shells for various artillery systems and rockets, in addition to a significant supply of small arms ammunition, all crucial for their ongoing defense efforts.
Despite the war in Ukraine, 220 Czech companies remain in operation. Also, as part of the cooperation, Ukraine plans to provide the Czech Republic with a list of the necessary industrial equipment needed by enterprises that have suffered as a result of military actions.
In addition, this includes the production of artillery shells. That is, these are the enterprises that remained on the territory of the Czech Republic and are still within the framework of the former Warsaw Pact. And considering that about 70% of the armament of the Ukrainian armed forces is still of Soviet origin, this assistance is invaluable. Support provided.
Within the framework of the Czech initiative, the processes of procurement and delivery of ammunition are being optimized. The historical memory of the Czech people remembers well the disaster that Russia can bring to foreign lands. That is why the Czechs support Ukraine, which is now fighting against the aggressor, preventing the Russians from seizing both their own country and Europe.
The Russians are blaming everything. It's a catastrophe. The biggest fuel crisis has hit the Russian Federation head-on. There isn't a single drop of gasoline. Drivers are abandoning their cars. Life has come to a halt. Fuel for Putin has become a luxury. Ukrainian drones have accomplished a critically important mission. With each passing day, Russia is left with less and less, and it's sinking to its knees more and more. And it seems that only a painful fall lies ahead. All the hottest details about this are coming up in the story.
An absolute anti-record for Putin. Cars in Russia are ceasing to be a means of transportation and are turning into a luxury item. Because for Russian residents, fueling their iron horses is becoming increasingly difficult. Despite the fact that the Kremlin extracts an enormous amount of oil, the country is facing a shortage of gasoline and diesel fuel.
It's almost laughable that in a country that used to be a gas station and a mere appendage of China, with an economy based on pipelines, now can't even provide its own population and businesses with oil and petroleum products.
The main culprit behind the catastrophic fuel shortage across the border has been the Ukrainian armed forces and their precision strikes on the occupiers' oil refining infrastructure. Thus, by the end of September, oil refineries across Russia were idling at least 38% of their primary oil processing capacity, or 338,000 tons per day. For the former gas station country, this is a colossal market collapse. Recently, the fuel shortage has become acutely felt even at the front lines. At regular Russian gas stations, you won't find 95-octane fuel in most regions, even if you search all day.
In particular, at certain gas stations, they began to temporarily limit the amount of fuel sold per person. Somewhere up to 20 liters, somewhere up to 30 liters, they started rationing sales. And at other stations in some regions of Russia, they even temporarily suspended the sale of certain types of fuel altogether. That is, in some places there was no AI 92 gasoline available, in others there was no AI 95, and so on. At the same time, at small independent private gas stations that are not part of the so-called vertically integrated oil companies, there was a sharp increase in fuel prices.
The recent situation in the country has only made things worse. Along with the shortage at gas stations came sky-high prices. This summer, the price of gasoline and diesel in Russia has increased by a solid 15 to 20%. And starting from autumn, the price tags on gas station signs across the border have been changing almost daily. Each time they add 1 or 2 rubles to the cost of fuel. But even such an increase is not enough to cover the costs of Russian oil refineries, which are now constantly under attack from Ukrainian armed forces drones.
The scale of the deficit has become such that these targeted strikes are hitting the pockets of oil workers and already struggling refineries and oil companies whose profits are collapsing, making it difficult to somehow supply the domestic market.
Things are even considerably worse for Russian oil traders on foreign markets than they are domestically. If previously the state generously compensated for price differences through exports, today almost no one in Europe is actively buying Russian oil, which has created significant economic challenges. Therefore, there is no longer any reason to expect cheap gasoline within Russia itself.
Oil companies can't make money on foreign markets because, as you know, everything is tight, there are restrictions, and oil prices are falling. Right now, Russian oil is trading at $55 to $57 per barrel, taking into account all the discounts and price cuts. And that's it. So now the oil companies, having run out of options, are starting to ask for help, lower taxes, reduced mineral extraction tax rates, export duties, and excise taxes.
There's nothing left to patch the hole in the Russian economy. As a result, the Kremlin couldn't come up with anything better than to announce the start of fuel imports into the country while simultaneously halting all exports of gasoline and diesel from the Russian Federation.
In other words, they're trying to skirt around the truce. How can you not recall Churchill here, who said that when the Soviet Union starts buying wheat, that's when it will come to an end? Similarly, when Putin's Russia starts buying gasoline, after some time it will come to an end, just as the Soviet Union once did.
The Ukrainian authorities have also actively taken up the task of helping Russia come to an end. Alongside drone attacks on oil refineries, Kiev is also hitting Putin's economy on the diplomatic front.
If Ukraine effectively synchronizes its comprehensive strategy to significantly reduce Russia's vital resource base with its key international allies, specifically with the powerful nations of Europe, the United States of America, Japan, and other crucial partners and so on, then sanctions are imposed very quickly. And also, South Korea and Singapore are simply afraid to supply gasoline to Russia so as not to fall under sanctions.
In such a hopeless situation, the Kremlin is grasping at the last straw. Disregarding all environmental regulations, the government has practically legalized counterfeit fuel in the hope that at least it will supply the Russian gasoline market. However, analysts assure that such a decision will, on the contrary, drive the final nail into the coffin of oil refining in the Russian Federation.
The authorities have decided to fight the gasoline shortage with methods that cause suffocation and ruin car engines. Deputy Prime Minister Novak has proposed bringing back for 6 months a special gasoline additive that was banned back in 2016. With its help, they want to increase gasoline production, but there's a catch. This additive has a negative impact on the environment, damages older cars, and increases the concentration of nitrogen oxide in exhaust fumes, which settles in the air at a height of 60 centimeters above the ground. Inhaling these fumes is dangerous for people. Among the symptoms of poisoning are slowed reactions, a feeling of heaviness, and bluish discoloration of the hands and ears.
And such a surrogate with toxic additives can instantly turn an engine into a pile of scrap metal. After half a year of driving on such fuel, a car will become unusable, just like all Russian public transport. Then without proper gasoline or diesel, the entire multi-million-strong country will be forced to switch to good old horse-drawn carts.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now. A triple strike from the sky, Gripen, F-16 and Mirage. This entire triad is about to burst into Ukrainian skies and crush Russia. The stakes are rising and Ukraine's air fleet is expanding before our eyes. The West is shouting, it's time to act. The Kremlin is not thrilled about such a strengthening of the Ukrainian armed forces. Our comeback is causing fear in Putin. He definitely wasn't prepared for this. What kind of powerful strike awaits the enemy? Don't miss what's next.
To defend more effectively and attack with greater results, the Ukrainian General Staff has confirmed the upcoming transfer of an additional batch of Western fighter jets to the armed forces. In addition, new deliveries of Patriot systems are coming from several allies at once. This fall, Ukraine definitely does not intend to leave Moscow's strikes unanswered.
Obviously, the Air Force's entire fleet will certainly be expanding, and our operational capabilities will definitely be growing significantly. Yeah. This is important.
However, it was in an interview with the BBC that the first Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine, Lieutenant General Ivan Havrilyuk, revealed that Kiev is preparing to receive several types of new aircraft at once.
We clarified with Havrilyuk when the next deliveries will take place. He said, let's wait until you see them in the skies over Ukraine. Then you'll understand the answer, said the Deputy Minister. Bravo, that's a very good and correct answer, so that the enemy doesn't understand, doesn't know, and so there are no expectations here. It's a clear, normal, practical, and pragmatic position. They will be carrying out combat missions in the air, and then we'll see.
The only thing Havrilyuk revealed was the models of the upcoming reinforcements. And yes, we're talking about a new batch of F-16S, French Mirage 2000s and Swedish Gripens.
A very effective and truly powerful piece of advanced aviation equipment, which is precisely what the Swedish industry has skillfully created, specifically designed to effectively counter a more powerful and better resourced adversary.
Analysts explain that given the number of sorties flown by Ukrainian aviation, the issue of maintainability is far from insignificant. It is also very important that the hardpoints can accommodate Ukrainian as well as European and American weaponry. After all, supplies to Ukraine are now coming from all over the world, and the Gripen meets these requirements.
The Swedish army has long been prepared for a possible confrontation with the Russian Federation, and the aircraft in question, namely the JS-39 Gripen, was designed specifically for such a scenario. It is relatively inexpensive to maintain and highly functional.
At the same time, in terms of maneuverability, they are head and shoulders above all Soviet aircraft and most Western ones, which will give our pilots a significant advantage when operating directly near the front line. Another addition to Ukraine's Air Force will be the French Mirages. This equipment is already familiar to our pilots and is mainly used for long-range strikes with Scalp and Storm Shadow missiles.
6,900 kilograms of payload. This can include bombs, missiles, a huge assortment. Moreover, it can also carry external fuel tanks. Well, for example, for intercepting something, for patrolling.
According to analysts, these aircraft also perform well during large-scale operations. The point is that French fighter jets are equipped with an advanced inter-aircraft communication system which allows them to carry out missions more effectively as a group.
It can also operate in communication with AWACS systems. Thanks to this, the shortcomings of their radars are not as noticeable, and the ability to create three-dimensional objects on the display makes it easier to conduct strikes and fly at low altitudes. However, it should be noted that Mirages are specifically designed to operate as part of a team. They exchange information with each other, with ground-based radars and with AWACS systems.
As a result, in addition to more effective strikes, Ukraine will also be able to defend itself more efficiently. According to President Volodymyr Zelensky at the end of the summer, Israel provided us with an additional Patriot air defense system, and 2 more systems are already on the way.
The Israeli system is operating in Ukraine a month. We are receiving 2 air defense systems in total. Let's get everything more about air defense.
But as it turned out, the German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius is not against talking about it. He confirmed that it is Berlin that is handling the delivery of air defense systems for Ukraine, in addition to the 3 already delivered. However, the main intrigue regarding the transfer of additional weapons to Ukraine remains the American Tomahawk missiles. The Institute for the Study of War reported that Moscow is already trying to disrupt these deliveries, claiming that in response it might deploy its Oreshnik in Venezuela. However, according to rumors from Washington, these threats have not affected the White House.
That's all from me for now. This was Yadarina Hudskalo with you. Even more hellish news from the front in our next broadcast. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.